Everyone, so I'm going to do a quick presentation on using silhouette cutters, or I should say cutters and plotter, for modelling. So what is it? So a silhouette cutter, or an equivalent, is a small desktop electric plotter cutter machine controlled via USB or Bluetooth from your computer. It's driven by vector image software. If anyone's had anything to do with CorelDRAW or Illustrator or Inkscape or anything like that, it's the same type of thing. And what I use it for primarily is for cutting stencils, but you can also use it for cutting thin sheet styrene or wood for scratch building. So 2D objects you can cut with this. So why do you want one? You can create your own markings regardless of decal availability, which is excellent. You don't need to worry about decal film because there is none. You're able to weather it like paint because it is paint. So if you want to do undercolors or weathering on top, it's all not affected by that. You can create transparency masks. So for doing canopies and windscreens and things like that, rather than buying them, you just make your own. And like I said, you can cut 2D shapes for scratch building, and you can also sell it to the other parts of the family that may want to use it for doing other hobby things like, one insert thing here, but. So you can get a few different brands. One brand is Cricut. They come in 3 different sizes: the Joy, the Maker, and there's multiple others. They look a bit like that, and they have different sizes. The different sizes mean you've got different size cutting beds, but I think basically the capabilities are very similar. I will say, from what I've been told, now I've never owned a Cricut, but I've been told they're probably, from a modelling perspective, they're probably not as good, but I'll put an asterisk there because I haven't used it, so I can't say for sure. So the Silhouette is the other company that makes these. This is what I have. They do a portrait, which is A4, a Cameo, a Cameo Plus, and a Cameo Pro, and they do multiple other ones, depending on the size that you want. The one that I have there and the one that's pictured is the Cameo, which is 30 by 30 centimetre cut bed. So you can see the rest there are all different sizes, and you can spend as much as you like. Like I said, that's the one that I have, and I'm going to talk about primarily tonight from an experience perspective. They come with different cutter blades that you can buy for the portrait and for the Cameo. The one that comes with is the Auto Blade there, the one I've got the arrow pointing at. The Auto Blade one does what it says on the tin. You don't need to adjust it. It just, for all intents and purposes, you set it in the software and it does the thing. There are other types of blades you can get that you can actually set the depth manually. If you're cutting things like leather and that sort of stuff, you can do that as well. I don't have them, but there you go. It is possible. You'll need a mat. You can use a mat at least. The cutting mats are there. You can get low tack, medium tack, and high tack, and they're literally what it says in the tin. It's sticky, so when you're putting things you want to cut on there, like a sheet of Oramask or some sort of material, it doesn't slide around as the cutter's trying to do its thing. These ones are in a 12-inch grid, so 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. The software to drive it, it comes with, the Silhouette one comes with Silhouette Studio. It's bespoke and it comes with the cutter for free. There's a free version. You can pay extra to get the Pro, more advanced version. I've only got the free version and it does everything I've wanted it to do so far. I haven't felt the need to buy the Pro, but it is available. Cricut does a similar one called Design Space. It's only works on Windows, so if you've got a Mac, you're out of luck. But the Silhouette Studio comes with the Mac version. It's on iPad too? Okay, yeah, so the iPad, there's an iPad version as well. Inkscape also works with these. Inkscape is free and open source software, so as what it says on the tin, it's free. And that works with Linux, Windows, and Mac. And then there's Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW, which are paid and now a subscription because everything needs to be a subscription. So if you already have that, great, but you have to have a plug-in to make it print directly from Illustrator or CorelDRAW, but it is possible. The other way you can do it is actually export it as a DXF and then import it into Silhouette Studio and cut. Okay, so the materials and consumables I'm going to recommend. So for doing masking, what I use primarily is called Oramask 810, and I've actually got an example here. You can come and look at it, stuck on there as a trial I did. It's like a vinyl. It's flexible. It's translucent, so you can see where you're positioning it. It's low tack, which means it shouldn't pull paint off. Not a guarantee. Shouldn't pull paint off. It's easy to cut. The only problem with it is that if you have quite a complicated shape and you've cut that complicated shape out of the Oramask and then you lift the Oramask off, it being flexible will move, right? So then you may not ever get it back in the right shape ever again. So the settings for this is again for the Silhouette software. The settings I use to cut Oramask masks, you have it set to line at the top, and I'll show that in the software. And then you use these settings for me, and they've been bulletproof. They've worked every time so far. Touch wood. Yeah. Another material that I've tried is Oracal 631, which is actually more for doing like cutting things out and then sticking it on as like a stencil, as a sticker. It's much more rigid, so it allows you to do smaller, more detailed cuts, and it doesn't flex as much. It's high tack, that's the only thing to be aware of. So if you do put it on a painted surface, you have a chance of damaging the paint. I didn't, but it's possible. And it's not opaque, so it's multiple colors. I got purple because that's what was available and it was cheap. And I have used it once for doing a 72nd scale roundel to get the roux to come out. And they're the settings I use for that, which is the same as the Oramask, rather, sorry. The other material that you can get that works really, really well for this is Tamiya tape sheets or equivalent. It's better for compound curves. So one thing Oramask doesn't like is going around really tight compound curves. It'll tend to lift back off again. Whereas this stuff, you have a better chance of getting it to stick because it's just like Tamiya tape. It's again low tack, it's easy to cut, but it's opaque and it can tear. If you get a bit excited with it, it can tear. And they're quite good for small stencils, but they're also, the ones that you buy from Tamiya are only quite small. They're like A5, so they're not very big. They're the settings that are found to be successful so far for me, at least for the Tamiya sheet, which is a little bit slower and less force. So the other thing we can use, like we talked about briefly, if you're scratch building something from plastic, you can use plastic sheet. Up to 5 thou, I have heard people trying thicker. Even with 5 thou, you have to, it may score and not go all the way through. You might actually like crack it off the last little bit, but you can do it. It's better with thinner stock. And like I said, you can do 2D shapes with it. It can be prematurely blunting your blades, though. It's the only thing, because it's cutting through something that's a bit harder than tape or Oracal or a mask. And they're the cutting settings I use for that. So again, the force is a lot higher, so you're putting a lot more pressure on the blade. Okay, so creating a mask. So you can either scan a decal sheet or an image, or you can just draw it yourself if you're so inclined. You can pick a drawing or a marking to recreate. You can either redraw it or draw it yourself, or you can use a function called auto trace, which does what it says. It auto traces it for you. The only thing with using auto trace is it tends to be the edges are a lot softer, so it's not a sharp. So if you've got a sharp angle like that, it might sort of curve it at the corner, and it's not quite as good. But you can combine the two. You can do the auto trace initially, and then go back and tidy it up to make it the right shape if you want to do that. We'll say that cutting anything than about less than 3 millimeters, you can do it depending what it is, but it can be a bit problematic. As you see there in the Oracal on the right, there, on the left there for me, sorry, the text, the 45 years, it just wouldn't cut it. No matter how much I tried, how much I played with different settings, it just wouldn't play. So there you go. The smaller stuff that I tried to do here for the Caribou I built with the Royal Australian Air Force across the side there, it would actually cut the letters, but it would lift the center parts out of like the A or the O and ruin the stencil, unfortunately. So the end fields, the little dog looking things, the end fields, they came out okay, but the other things wouldn't. So you can sort of try things, but I have cut successfully stuff down to 2 mils, but they're simple shapes.
So when you say 2 mils, you mean like in terms of height?
Yeah, so if you were doing a circle, a 2 mil diameter circle, you could cut successfully. I've cut stuff down to that size, like I'll show you in a little bit, like a hook shape for doing like a NATO stencil, and that was about 2 mils high, and it worked. But you've got to fiddle around with it sometimes to get it to cut. So some fonts that I use a lot that you might find useful if you're taking notes. Amarillo, USAF, and some of the RAF ones there are quite good. So if you're doing a particular stencil and a particular type of text, you can just use a font and just type it in rather than redraw it. Just makes it a little bit easier. So auto trace and redraw, like I said, there's 2 differences. It's probably not that apparent from the screen there, but what I've done is I've auto traced that roundel, and it's hard to see, but on the one on the right there, as you're looking at it, it's not smooth. It's not a nice smooth circle. It's sort of made up by a ton of little tiny points, so it's not necessarily going to give you a nice clean cut. Whereas if you draw it yourself, you can get that control a bit better. So the auto draw, the auto trace one controls on that button underneath the red arrow. So you can see there, trying to auto trace there, the decals on the right, and the result from the auto traces on the left. You can see what I mean by it's not very good. Another example of auto trace. You can see they're quite soft in the corners. Well, I mean, it would work, but it's a bit soft in the corners. And then here's an example of a redrawn one at the top and auto trace on the bottom. So you can see the redraw is a lot sharper. So a quick video on doing a canopy stencil, or canopy mask rather. This is how I would do it normally. Draw it out, and then you can play around with the points, and you pull the handles to change the, you're doing the maths in the background. I'm not doing the maths because no one looked at me and said I'm maths. But sit there and you work out all the vectors to get the shape that you want. So you can make things, if they're already a curve, you can make them flat, and if they're already flat, you can make them a curve. And if it's curved, then you can adjust the curve by pulling the handles. So I just basically line it up to the shape that I want. And then if everything goes well when I cut it, it comes out a nice shape and I can put it straight on. I've done this successfully with a few different canopies and made my own masks, and it's really useful. And there you go. That's what it looks like at the end. You can then duplicate that. So you can copy it and make 2. So if you've got the thing that's the same shape on either side, you can just copy it and then flip one horizontally, and then you've got a mirror image of the same thing, so you can cut 2 of them if you need to, or cut as many as you need. If you stuff one up, you can cut another one. You're not going to waste any money doing it that way.
Where did you get the original thing you traced from?
That's from a Tamiya P51 kit. So it came in the box. I just used it as an example. There we go. So yeah, like I was saying, this video just shows that you can copy it and you can transform it, you can flip it and rotate it. I won't go through it though. We'll skip over this. It's not that exciting. So one thing I do is you can see here is I've got a current running. This is all the things that I've cut. And all the things that I cut, I leave on there, and I change the things that I have already cut to red, and the things I'm going to cut next, I change it to black. So the reason being is then I can keep that same piece of Oracal on that 30 by 30 sheet and just keep putting it back in and cutting on the same sheet without having to pull it off and do it again every single time. And you can set this in up the top there, you can see the colors, and you check which ones you want to cut. So if you want to cut black, you check the black one. If you want to cut red, you check the red one, and it will cut depending on what you tell it to. So there you go.
Sorry.
You're right.
That was the sharp mount you did on your machinist streak thing?
Yeah, you can see all the different iterations I went through to get it to how I wanted it.
Yeah.
So the beauty of doing this is that's just out of my head. I didn't have anything to copy from. I just made it up. And then I tried it. No, that's no good. It needs to be this, or it needs to go this way, or up, or down, or right. I keep trial and error until I'm happy, and then I can paint. So yeah, that's this one. where I've scanned the decal itself, then I've drawn or redrawn the decal that I want to make a mask. And this is it doing its thing, cutting the mask. You press send, it moves it to the position I wanted to, and off it goes. So this is real time, so this is how long it takes. Depending on the size and complexity and how many masks you cut, it might take not long, a couple minutes.
Do you use the auto blade, or do you upgrade it to a different blade?
No, I just use the auto blade. I haven't had the need. For doing the really fine stuff, I've heard that there are different blades that work better, but I haven't experimented with it yet. And then one thing I do, which not everyone does, is I weed the actual stencil on the mat before I take it off. And by weeding, what I mean is I'm removing the bits that I don't want. So I take the bits that I don't want out of the stencil and I chuck them away now, and then I take them off and then put them on the model. There you go. So I won't go through all of it. I won't make you suffer. So you can see there, this is the one that's up the front here. I've got it sized to fit. This is a trial, so this one I'm going to throw in the bin. I'm just going to trial it to make sure it fits. And then when I actually do the finished bit to do the painting, then I'm confident it is actually going to work. So if you're doing a stencil that has multiple parts, like an O, where it has that center part, which you don't want to move, but you want to keep aligned. How you do this is I'll make the actual stencil itself. The little cut at the top there is an alignment mark that I've used to align to the model, something like a panel line or something like that, so I can line it up where I want it. And then I take that bottom rectangle part, peel it off, and I'll stick it on top, and then I'll peel the whole mask up, lifting the whole thing, including the O and the A's and all that sort of stuff, so that you don't end up leaving bits behind that's actually something you want. So like this, I put it on, burnish it down, make sure you rub it, give it a good burnish, make sure it's actually stuck down properly, and then you can peel the top carrier part off. Mask off, and then you paint it, and then you peel it off and you end up with a marking. You can be as complicated or as simple as you want. That was quite a simple one. Some of the more complicated ones. So I've borrowed this from Flying S models. This is him doing a more complicated cut, if you want to call it that. It's a roundel, if it's going to play. There you go. So you can see there he's got a stars and bars roundel. I don't know why it's playing like that. But anyway, it is. Like I said, we'll skip over it. That's fine. So you can do some complicated ones like the shark's mouth, like you said there, Al, before. That's multiple parts. So I do one part, do a color, then another part, then do a color, then another part, and do a color. And just, so I've got those marked little cuts, the rectangles there. I've used those rectangles to align the masks one after the other, so they're all in the same plane. So that kit, I don't know if everyone saw it, that kit was 95% paint. There's only like a few decals, not very many. Same with that other one I did, the one I brought in last month. That's mostly paint as well, with a couple of little spare decals. The X-Wing up the top there is again about 95% paint and just a couple of decals, and I think there's like 2 of those decals are on the pilot's helmet, so there's nothing. The caribou there, you can do things like that where you've got a delineated marking, like a soft marking like that, and you want to have a soft feathered edge through the colors on the numbers. You can do that with paint, where you can't do it with a decal. Roundels are nice and easy, relatively speaking. And the original reason why I bought the silhouette was because I built the FX Canberra and the decals and that were complete trash. And I had just elected to do this to make my own markings rather than try and, because no one I was aware of made aftermarket, so I had no option. But yeah, it ended up working pretty well. So this is what I was saying before. This is the smallest thing I've cut, and these are about 2 mils high. And they're all the NATO markings, so for jack points, lifting points, air, fuel, all that sort of things. And they came out, they worked. But yeah, that's the limit, that's the smallest I've cut. But the thing is with that is they didn't have like an A where you've got that little bit in the middle. That's where it seems to fall over. You can use it for other type of masks. It doesn't have to be a stencil. It can just be like, I want to mask a circle that's a nice, exactly the right size. Cut it out, on, done. You don't have to think about it so much. It's very useful for that sort of thing as well. And like I said, you can cut some stuff with plastic art if you want to do simple 2D shapes. If you need to do that for your car models or for your stiffener ribs on the back on the Hornet or a truck, if you're doing a leaning nude, you can do that as well. Lots of different things you can do with it. It's not just stencils. Any questions? I know I flew through that. That was a bit quicker than I was intending, but I think it's getting late and we all probably had enough. So does anyone have any other questions about any of that?
No.
We get the supplies like the sheet and stuff.
So I get Oramask. There's a sign cutting place in Fishwick, and I can't remember what they're called right now, but they're near, what's it called? Plastic Creations?
Near them, so it's across the road.
Yeah, it's pretty much, so Plastic Creations are here, they're right directly across. I just can't think what they're called off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But yeah, so I bought Oramask from them by the meter, so it's a meter wide, and I bought it 2 meters of that for $22. And that will, I haven't needed to go back, and that was like 3 years ago. So I don't make big enough stencils to go through it fast enough. The Tamiya stuff you can just buy from Toy World. The Tamiya tape, they do the sheets, the A5 sheets. Any other questions? Happy to provide settings if anyone wants the settings too. I can give you the PowerPoint or whatever. If you have questions about settings, just ask and I can let you know what I do. Maybe.
I just
It might be. Yeah, I'd have to look. Yep.
Spotlight sells great stuff.
They sell silhouettes too. That's where I bought my silhouette. Was Spotlight in Queanbeyan.
Yeah, there's one in your garden.
Yep. So they sell the blades and the cutting mats and the machines. So yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.